Premier League stars queuing up to join MLS, says Robbie Keane. LA Galaxy captain Robbie Keane claims Premier League stars are desperate to make the move to MLS. MLS has become home to some of the world's biggest stars since Keane followed David Beckham to Los Angeles Galaxy in 2011, with Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, David Villa and Kaka among a host of high-profile players swapping Europe for the United States. Former Premier League winners Ashley Cole and Nigel de Jong have also arrived in MLS, linking up with Keane at Galaxy, while former Juventus attacker Sebastian Giovinco was last season's MLS MVP with Toronto FC. Keane revealed players are now queuing up to get a taste of the USA's homegrown league. So it's one of growing competition. There's been a massive difference between 2011 and now, said the 35-year-old Republic of Ireland international. David Beckham was really the one who started off, and I followed him since then. The influx of stars who have come over here has been absolutely huge. People like Kaka, Lampard, Gerrard, Dos Santos, Villa, Pirlo, they're massive names in Europe. It's only going to get bigger. There's no doubt about that. The league is only going to get stronger. Players I've played with are calling me up now from England and Spain, and they're really desperate to come over because they see how much the league has grown and because of the lifestyle as well. Now, relating to MLS, in terms of players maybe wanting to go over there because of the lifestyle, in slight relation to that, there's innovation potentially going on as well, because it's one of them was Fox to mic up coaches during MLS live broadcasts. En route to becoming a leading world soccer league, the MLS is innovating by placing microphones on coaches during nationally televised TV games so that viewers can hear the words coming from the horse's mouth, rather than the horse's a double crooked letter. Anyway, Fox's lead producer Shaw Brown hopes to incorporate the clips during moments, for example when the ball goes out of play and there is a good 10 seconds to roll something in. Brown assured that these are things that enhance the game, but for me they will never get in the way of the game. I won't let them. US sport is culturally inclined to bridging the gap between sports personalities and the fans. In the NBA, coaches are outfitted with microphones, as are referees in the NFL. This practice is unfamiliar though to the traditional fans of football, and perhaps unnerving to the passionate manager who previously has had little concern about watching his manner of communication. Fortunately, the broadcast network will not relay the sound live. Rather, the communications will be vetted by the broadcaster and an MLS representative to ensure the words will not affect the sensibilities of the viewing audience, and then relayed during opportune moments throughout the game. This is similar practice used in the NBA and ostensibly little bother in the opinion of Jesse Marsh, head coach of the New York Red Bulls, who said maybe in the beginning, but then the game gets going and then you're not too worried about it. Jim Curtin, head coach of the Philadelphia Union, expressed his belief that it will change the sideline behavior of coaches. Any coach that's going to be mic'd up, there's no way to say exactly what you would if you weren't mic'd up. That's a fact. Even if you watch these NBA huddles and timeouts and the different things that are said, you can almost tell right away that the coach is speaking like he has a microphone on and is watching what he says. Beyond the likely expletives that will be captured, the bug coach might be bugged by the prospect of having strategy and tactics exposed for public consumption. Though Marsh mentioned this was a viable concern, he expressed that its benefits outweigh the costs. There was some talk among the coaches group that it may expose some of the tactics or strategy in what you're doing, but I don't think there are too many secrets. There are some personalities that are coaches in this league, and there are some interesting things being done with different teams. And the more insight that I think fans can get into the complexities of what's happening on the field, I think the more interesting it gets and the more compelling it gets. So it is one of them ones where, in Marsh's view, the access to coaches' insight could increase interest in the on-pitch play by educating the viewers as to what's happening, be it the coach's interpretation of the game or the coach's ostensible plan for the players as indicated through the instructions. Or it's also worth mentioning the danger of revealing tactical insight may be abated if the MLS representative has some authorized amount of discretion to filter out such information. It's kind of like freedom of speech. It's a bit hard to vet that kind of thing, but anyway, it's unlikely that sensitive information will be barked out across the field in the course of a game anyway, for the alert is on the opponent's bench to discourage that form of activity. Where the issue arises with greater force is in the whisperings between coaches and players. It remains to be seen whether fans will be privy to those interactions. There will definitely be some access to locker room interactions. Brown stated that cameras will be in the locker rooms of televised games to be a fly on the wall for a little bit. Now it's interesting that it's one of them was that feature will actually debut as the 2016 MLS season kicks off actually. So it's one of them ones. G-Man, I want to hear from you first. What do you think of Keane's claim, Robbie Keane's claims, and also that little innovation within the MLS? Because that actually reminds me of something, but I'll get into that in a minute. G-Man, what's your thoughts? And Skypers, if you want to jump in, please let us know as well. We'd love to hear from you too. G-Man, you wanna run with it?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute and I was talking.
Yeah.
No, but I was saying, in 2010, 2011, I remember, I think we had this, we had a conversation talking about the future of MLS, and we were talking about, potentially, will, European stars be flooding over to the MLS in the future?
Yeah, we have mentioned, yeah.
By the sounds of it, like from what Robbie Keane's saying, people are, in his words, are desperate to make the move. I'm not sure how true that is, and it depends on what sort of level he's talking about. Because really and truthfully, the names he's mentioned so far, they're more of the elderly pros in the game, people that are coming to the end of their careers, and as we know, they get bumper big contracts in nice sunny climates of the lush environments in America. So it is somewhat of a journey to be done. In the latter stages of your career, we've seen like big stars in the past, or we've heard of big stars in the past, like Pele, making their ventures over to the MLS. But I'm not saying there's a threat of the MLS potentially nicking the best talents in the future, but I wouldn't be surprised that younger stars might be looking to the horizons of the MLS. And I think we mentioned this before because it's where opportunities arise. You look at Ian Wright's stepson,
Bradley Wright Phillips.
He's over there, and he's actually benefited from his move to the MLS, playing for the Red Bulls. So and he is a good statesman to look at and think, what, for a younger and developmental type player to look at their situation, if they're not getting the game time over in Europe, to say, look, we could have a good shot at going to the MLS. It's an up and coming market in such, and they're thirsty for good potential pros. They may want to cut their feet, but at the moment I just see it as elderly statesmen, really looking for a last shot, basically. So I'm in two minds of it. I don't know whether it that's actually factual. They're desperate, words desperate, or whether it's just the MLS are desperate to bring stars over. But moving on to the mic and Marsh's hopes for this pinning the mic on the coaches and managers. That's not me. I'm not really interested in that side of the game. I don't really want to hear what Mourinho or Wenger or Steve Bowles got to say on the touchline. I'd rather hear what the referee has to say on his decision making there and then, so everyone in the stadium can hear, or from the television aspect can hear what they've got to say, to be honest, because that's the most, for me as a fan, that's more crucial to me. I really couldn't care less if you hear a manager on the sidelines shouting, run up, run left, run right, move up further, come on, F this, get moving, if they let their tongue slip. I really couldn't, that to me, that, who cares about that, who actually, it's to me, manager and players, there's a sacred, for me in football, there's a sacred part of the game, and that's where the managers and players, they go off the pitch, You know, they talk with one another. They come back on the pitch. They play the game as what they've discussed in the changing rooms or on the touchlines or the sidelines. You know, that's fantastic. But I think it's going to cause more problems than it's actually going to achieve entertainment and, you know, add a greater side to the game.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective. I mean, Jamie Bailey, you wanted to jump in on these two topics as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to say it's probably in terms of the players going over to the MLS. I'll agree with Gman. It's pretty much for the elder statesmen if they actually want to just continue their career and not have to play every week and be in a demanding league as they were before. As the chairman of the MLS said, it's growing, but it is, so to speak, 100 years behind the European leagues. So again, he's having to play catch up regardless of what happens. Apparently, they're building bigger stadiums and newer stadiums, and you look at the American sort of piece of land. They can build a stadium in the desert, and they'll still fill it up anyway. If I look at this idea of bringing microphones to certain managers, bad idea. Simply because of what it does. It just takes away the alluring idea of what did the manager choose, what did he speak to his coach, what did he speak to his players about, blah blah blah. And yeah, you can find out, but it's also a good secret to have, because that way you can say, okay, well, you can see it on the pitch. It's like, for me, again, I said about Benitez bringing off Shelby. I don't know what the thinking was behind that, but you can find that in the press conference afterwards, or you can find out that idea in a different way. It's maybe in a couple of days. But we do out right there and then.
But we do live in a world where everyone wants everything yesterday. We do live in that kind of world. I mean, look at social media. When something happens on the football pitch, it's a vine 2 minutes later, and then stuff goes viral. And look how quick that goes viral. Whenever someone says something, instantly speculation is on Twitter straight away, and then eventually that becomes Sky sources within a couple hours, and it's that kind of thing. So I know what you're saying. I just think in general, this is going to be. Obviously, I'm a football coach. I see it as it's some coaches over here will see it as an invasion of their privacy. Hence the reason why it's hardly really been brought up over here. Over in America, the reason why it works so well is because basketball is sort of an American sport, although it is played in Europe and other places. The NFL, it's an American sport, so it's now being played over here and over in Japan and blah blah blah. But it's predominantly for only one country to kind of hear it. But if they were to bring it over to this side and it goes global, then it's another money spinning idea just to kind of get people on board. I don't think it will. I think it's going to cause a lot of. It's not going to cause a lot of controversy, because obviously, as they said, they're going to edit what was said, and they're going to warn the coaches of their conduct. And really and truly, you shouldn't have to watch. You're on the sidelines with only your word and the rest of the players behind around you. You shouldn't really have to watch your tone. It's like, if somebody's not doing their job, you got to tell them. And that's the thing about it. Is if that's what you're there for. You can have a quiet word and blah blah blah, but modern day tactics should old school tactics should still work in the modern day. Tell a guy, do your job, regardless of how you do it. Just do it. If you have a camera on you, you're almost saying, you know what? Can you do your job, please? It's okay. You're gonna get paid at the end of the week, but please do your job a bit more better than you are. And then he doesn't, and it's like, I wish I didn't have that camera on me. Otherwise, I would have told you in a different way. And that's where I think it's kind of going. So I do agree with G-Man on both points, and I think on this occasion, if they bring this into the world game,
that. It's just gonna take off as a money spinner rather than something that's actually gonna benefit the team, benefit the game overall.
Do you know what? I do have to say I do largely agree with you on that, in terms of it looking like just a money spinner, because at the end of the day, as much as it is an interesting innovation, it's actually kind of been done before. Ironically enough, actually, big shouts to the Attitude Era podcast. It's a wrestling podcast I actually really do enjoy. And one of the things that the Attitude Era podcast, they actually did a kind of bonus episode, or bono episode, or as they like to call it. It's one of them ones where they were talking about the XFL. And obviously, Jamie, you being a wrestling fan for a while, you will probably remember the XFL from the worst year in professional wrestling history, 2001. Started off brilliantly, ended horribly. But anyway, leaving that aside, it was a case of, with the XFL, they had this kind of innovation where essentially it was one of them was they just stuck a camera in a coach's face whilst he was giving his team talk and that kind of stuff. So that kind of innovation was done 15 years ago now, because the XFL kicked off around about this time in 2001. And they had all the fly on the wall stuff with cameras in the locker rooms. They did it with cameras in the cheerleaders' locker rooms eventually, when their ratings were sagging. If you'll pardon the phraseology there. It was like a last desperate attempt to get fans in, and it's one of them ones that I personally am not a fan of it, because you look at what's happened with, say, pro wrestling, where the curtain has been pulled back so far. There are no surprises anymore. There's nothing to guess anymore. There's no surprises. There's no mystery anymore. And like, imagine it's one of them ones if, say, Rafael Benitez's famous team talk, where he named 12 players at half time in Istanbul, where he named one night in Istanbul. That's where I kind of got that from. And 15 minutes that shook cop. It's one of them ones where it's like it's one of them ones. Imagine that team talk. You would have seen that a million times, and you would have had a million people trying to copy it, and then it waters down the effect of it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you would end up literally having adverts during these things. And it's like, I can understand you wanna have something to basically B-roll during kind of lull times during the match. But at the same time, I just think it would really degenerate. I think it would degenerate into a really gimmicky thing. Then you'd have the sponsors jumping in, wanting to have their logos there whilst the team talk is on. This team talk is brought to you by Snickers. Snickers, hungry, why wait? And all that. And it's like, or Subway, eat fresh. It would be like bloody that, say, Survivor Series 2001 when it was sponsored by Xbox, or Snickers presents Halloween Havoc, and it's like, this halftime team talk is brought to you in association with da-da-da-da, and it would get gimmicky. And as you said, Jamie, I agree with you, it would just become nothing but a money spinner. It'd be gimmicky. It's kind of similar to referees giving post-match interviews. It'd be one of them was you'd end up developing a group of people who are just like soundbite kings, where it'd just be like, go out there, pound them into the ground, yeah, and you get people, and then it'd almost degenerate into pro wrestling, where people will be cutting promos into the camera. Because you're going to get the verbal slips in terms of swearing and that kind of thing. But then once that initial teething phase is out of the way, you would legitimately just get people cutting promos to camera and just saying stuff to put themselves over in a certain way. If someone, could you imagine someone like, say, Jose Mourinho latching onto this? Oh my good Lord. Could you imagine him latching onto it? I mean, I've said he missed his calling as a pro wrestling manager. I mean, he'd have heat on the level of Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette. But it'd be one of them ones where it would get even worse. It would just degenerate into a comedy show. So, I mean, it's one of them ones. I mean, we have the post-match interviews. I mean, halftime swapping of shirts is gimmicky and stupid enough. You'll end up getting like halftime things. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to get into the changing room to brief my team. I don't want the cameras in. And then what they're going to do then, if the manager says they don't want cameras in, do what they do with post-match. It's like, you have to have someone to talk to the media or you get fined. And then it starts going down that road. So personally, I'm not a fan of miking up coaches. I would rather, it's distracting as well. Just let the coaches get on with it. As if the coaches are not under enough stress and pressure already. Now you sticking a camera in their face, monitoring everything they say. It's not as if the parasitic media doesn't scrutinize and twist and analyze everything that's said already. Sticking a camera on what they're saying is going to make it even worse. Oh, look, he singled out this player for criticism today. Oh, look at that. Ooh, they're just gonna. It'll get stupid. I really think it will get stupid. I mean, it's an interesting idea, fair dues, but I just don't think it's viable. Personally, I don't think it's viable. I really don't. But Robbie Keane saying, yeah, players are desperate to go over to the MLS. Desperate's probably a strong word, but at the same time, in a growing league, yeah, of course players are going to want to join a growing league at some point. Look at China. But China's, well, people are going there for the money. Whether the standard will rise, we're not going to see that for another 5 to 10 years. Similar with the MLS, we're not going to see for another 5 to 10 years whether these veterans who have been going over there for the past 10, 15 years. We're not going to see for another 5, 10 years whether these veterans and players who didn't quite set the world alight in Europe, like your Javinkos, the Wright Phillips brothers, guys like that, Freddie Adu, guys who didn't set the world on fire in Europe. We're not gonna see if more credible players than that. We're not gonna see if they're improving the league for another 5 to 10 years. So this will be one to revisit when PT is 10. To be honest, but yeah, any growing league. I mean, it's one of them ones where it's like, yeah, people always want to be the first to something. And it ties in with this kind of thing with this MLS innovation miking up coaches. People always want to be the first to do something. So I could kind of see what Robbie Keane's saying, but without proof of it, it's kind of hard to take it seriously. So that would be where I would go on, where I would stand on both of them.